non-resident fellow, John Kassir. He is the co-founder and managing director of the Lebanese independent media outlet Megaphone. John has been an active member of the grassroots movement in Lebanon since 2011, and he'll be introducing you to the rest of our panelists and taking us through this conversation. Thanks so much, John. I'll turn to you.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Suha, Ali, and Ala for joining us and everybody else on the stream. I'll start with maybe a brief definition because when we say reformist, we could mean several things. Here, we're precisely talking about the broader movement that started maybe around 2011 in the wake of the Arab uprisings, asking for reform and also being defined as an anti-sectarian movement. When we use the term reformist, we could use the term change or October 17 movement, etc. We're particularly talking about people who decided to engage in institutional politics and to try to engage with electoral politics. And this basically leads us to the framing of this event that is central to the municipal election result as a prism through which we understand some of the shortcomings that are persistent in this movement. Why is it important to look at it today? Because today there is a window of opportunity. This window of opportunity has, as Tim said, been defined by the prospect of reforms, which for the first time after 6 years of a brutal economic collapse are serious in Lebanon due to reformist figures in power, but also due to foreign pressure. It's also an opportunity given the fact that there is a significant weakening of a key player, which is Hezbollah at the military level, and also the fall of the Syrian regime, which has opened new possibilities for politics. So it's interesting in this specific timing to look at the prospect of reformists and their ability to actually make the impact that they've been seeking to do for years. At the same time, as much as there are opportunities, there are several challenges. The first has manifested in the last municipal election. We've seen results that are rather disappointing if compared to the 2022 parliamentary elections or also even the 2016 municipal election with the Beirut Madinati campaign. The challenges are many today. First, the security challenge. We remain in a very volatile situation in southern Lebanon, with Israel violating the ceasefire constantly. We also have an increase in sectarian tensions in some communities, which is making the non-sectarian and reformist discourse a bit less audible than it used to be. And more importantly, we're in a very particular situation where the reformist camp today is at the same time not the majority in parliament, but is supposedly represented in government by the prime minister, who has been acclaimed for years as a reformist person that would lead eventually a transitional government. So today, in a sense, we could say that the fate of that government, its ability to deliver on key reforms, its ability to deliver on reconstruction is going to be scrutinized by a lot of people, by the mainstream audience, and also, in a sense, is going to have a lot of impact on the ability of the reformist camp to make any successful result in the next election. I'll stop there and I will briefly introduce our three guests today and then start addressing them questions. There will be 2 rounds. The first will focus on the municipal election, trying to understand the results and what they mean politically. And the second part will be focused more on the prospects for the upcoming year and how can the reformist camp regain momentum in Lebanon. I'll start by introducing the guests. So we have Ala, who is a political figure and whose work has focused on socioeconomic innovation. Ala has worked on parliamentary reform and policy development in Lebanon and in the region. He's also a fellow at the Stanford Center for Democracy, Development and the Rule of Law. Ala was also a former candidate in the parliamentary elections of 2022. Then you have Suha. Suha Mnaimne is an urban planner. She's a researcher and also an active community organizer. She focuses on housing, on land, and urban politics. She's a lecturer at Alba University and also is a researcher affiliated with the Columbia University. Suha has recently ran for Beirut municipal election in May 2025 under the Beirut Madinati campaign. And finally, we have Ali Murad, who's a legal scholar and assistant professor in public law at the Beirut Arab University. He specializes in human rights and constitutional law. Ali has been involved in progressive political movements for years, way before the 2011 movement, and he is also a former candidate in one of the most difficult circumscription, which is the South in 2022. I'll start with Ala. Ala, you've been engaged in the anti-establishment movement at least since 2015. So the big movement, the protest movement that happened in the streets of Beirut following the garbage crisis. How can you explain the picture 10 years later in the 2025 municipal election? So despite the seemingly positive prospect of reform, how do you explain such a result?
Thank you, Jean. You're hearing me well, right? Because I had some difficulties connecting.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for this important and honest question. It's not easy to explain a setback 10 years into a struggle that was built on hope, sacrifice, and real hunger for change. But I think it's necessary to talk about this moment not as a failure, but as a mirror, a moment of reflection on what we built, what we didn't, and what we still have to do. Since 2015 and even before, many of us have been part of what I'd call a wave of political and civic awakening in Lebanon. We were not born from political parties or ideological institutions, though many of us are coming from different political backgrounds or ideological backgrounds. We came from movements, protests against the trash crisis, against corruption, against the theft of our public goods and futures. And then in 2019, that civic energy exploded into something much bigger, a national momentum of rupture. But the thing, while that rupture was emotional, moral, and widespread, it wasn't yet organizational, though there were many organizations, and one of which I've co-founded called for the 2019 protests. It didn't grow into structures that could survive beyond that moment. We had the people, but not the platform. We had the outrage, but not the architecture. And that's one of the most important reasons why we are here today. While we were mobilizing crowds, our opponents, the sectarian political class, the political elite, were doing something else entirely. They were preserving their networks through clientelism and so on, reinforcing their local patronage systems, keeping their party machines oiled and active. They didn't need to reinvent themselves. They just needed to wait us out. They knew that without sustained organization, most civic movements burn fast and fade quietly. So why didn't we build those structures? First, we need here some context. Like, we were trying to build a political alternative in the middle of one of the worst economic collapses in modern history. We were organizing while people were losing their life savings, fleeing the country, or simply trying to survive day by day. We didn't have access to institutions, mainstream media, sustainable resources, and we didn't inherit anything organizational. So we were kind of building as we go. So because of fatigue and fragmentation, many of the most active organizers, what I call the social multipliers of the movement, either burned out, left Lebanon, or lost faith. And those who stayed often worked in silos. We had dozens of initiatives, campaigns, lists, but very little glue between them. There wasn't a unified political home to bring people together, support them, grow their skills, and learn from each election cycle. So each and every time we were like kind of starting over. Or if we are not starting over, few are engaged in different areas and in all battles. Third, is that we didn't fully bridge the street with the institution. In 2022, we managed to get like 12 MPs into the parliament. That was a major historic victory, but there were no ecosystem behind them, no staff, no back office, no solid coalition, no shared strategy, and so they became isolated. Some of them retreated inward, either out of fear of making mistakes or from political inexperience. The base didn't feel heard. The people who elected those 12 MPs, and without a feedback loop between representatives and the public, people started to feel that they are just like the rest. And this is definitely got people into disappointment. But this disappointment was exploited by old powers, the political elite I mentioned, and magnified by mainstream media. The media framed every loss as a collapse or as a funeral. But honestly, we didn't lose a power we already had. We were trying to enter a new political terrain. Municipal elections were not a fall from grace. They were our first coordinated attempt to compete at the local level after the 2019 uprising and after the 2022 elections. And that's always an uphill battle when your opponent owns the terrain. The electoral law, the municipal electoral law, played a major role against us in the way of how it's designed on every aspect. What also made organizing hard is that our movement was never one single project. It was kind of constellation of actors, independents, activists, syndicalists, reform-minded professionals, grassroots movements, each with different priorities and approaches. And we struggled to agree on key strategic questions like who should we ally with to win seats? What are our priorities? Shall we maintain a purity at the risk of losing? Should we centralize coordination or stay horizontal? These questions were never settled, and the absence of clarity made joint organizing harder. But still, I don't think that this moment is purely negative. The setback is real, but it's also a diagnostic moment. It shows us what happens when we try to win politics without building political capacity, when we rely on momentum without preparing for resistance from people or from setback. It reminds us that energy must be converted into structure, and activism needs to evolve into strategy. I believe that in this moment, it's a transformational moment. It's a moment where we will transform and not demolish. We need to stop operating in bursts. We need permanent structures, political fronts that are inclusive, strategic, and rooted in real community presence. We need to create political homes where people can grow, learn, fail safely, and try again. And we need to take the long view. This is no longer a sprint. And we need to build alliances and making like the reform not just a slogan, but a disciplined daily practice. So yes, 2025 may feel like a setback, but it's also a checkpoint.
Yeah.
For those who are still here fighting, believing, and so on.
Thank you so much, Ala. I think you gave us an almost exhaustive picture and a lot to build on. I'll leave the part about the tactic to Ali later on, but I want to focus on what you mentioned about the lack of structure and ask Suha also about her experience as a candidate on the ground in the latest election. Basically, what was missing, if I may say, in the current edition of the Beirut Madinati election, if you compare to the 2016 campaign that led to 40% of the vote? How did you experience what Ala is talking about, which is the weak structure in practice as a candidate? And also, as a follow-up question, your interaction with people. What did you feel? Did you feel disappointment? Did you feel that this is a sanctioned vote? Or no, you felt that they're still seeking change, but maybe they didn't find it in the current political offer?
Okay. First, thank you, Jean, and the Tahrir Institute for the opportunity to talk about this. First, before I answer, I just want to clarify that my answers are specifically about the case of Beirut, though a lot can be applied to other cities and also to rural towns. If I want to compare like the 2016 experience with the 2025 experience, first, like let's look at the similarities, right? The candidates were presenting themselves as technocrats. We had a vision, we had a program, unlike other campaigns that did not have a program. They had no clue what's going on. Like at the same time, the Beirut Madinati and the candidates as well, they were presenting themselves as sort of the only anti-sectarian establishment campaign, although there were other like lists and other campaigns that were anti-establishment and anti-sectarian regime. But when it comes to the differences and why we were seeing like the drastic difference between 2016, where we were about to win, compared like to the current experience in 2025, where we're very far from winning. I think like to sum up the main points, and I'm going to talk here more from the perspective of people, and they're mostly the voters, like because you asked about my experience from interacting with people on the ground, and because I sort of tried to do some discussions with these people, and I got a lot of feedback. So the main points were related to the position of, and I'm going to be very clear about it and blunt, the MPs versus the candidates, the role of the candidates. At the same time, I think like us, people who are political workers, we realized that there was a very different moment in time between 2016 and 2025. So we sort of weren't expecting to win. We know that it was a very different political moment, right? And I think like Ala talked a bit about that history. So I want to start from here. So in 2016, as I said, it was a very different political moment compared to 2025. And it was marked by a completely different level of momentum. In 2015, there was a garbage crisis. People were extremely angry at the ruling class. And I don't think that there hasn't been before like 2015 and 2016 any organized electoral campaign that wasn't tied to the ruling class. So it was something new. It sort of created a shock. And I think it was the first ever non-sectarian campaign. So that was completely different compared to 2025. 2025, like between 2016 and 2025, there's a very long history of anti-establishment work. And anti-establishment work that was out to the public, right? It wasn't like just happening behind closed doors. So it started with a peak, I think, in 2019 during the revolution against the ruling class, followed by the 2022 parliamentary elections, which back then it was a huge success, like the 2022 parliamentary elections. But later on, the momentum sort of started declining for several reasons. And I think that one of the main reasons was that mainstream media outlet started referring to these MPs as like change. The same applied not just to the MPs, but also to our political landscape as a whole. And there were a lot of negative campaigns on that political landscape, whether it's the MPs, the political activists, and so on. And of course, in the absence of organized national political parties and movements, it was really hard to do anything against that these campaigns, right? At the same time, it was clear to the people, like the voters, that between 2022 and 2025, this landscape was extremely fragmented, and there's a lot of, it was very disorganized, and it was very clear to everyone. So at the same time, these MPs were seen as leading the municipal campaign due to several reasons. So it wasn't viewed as a campaign of movements or the campaign of certain parties or the campaign of a certain ideology or ideologies. So people saw it as an MP's campaign. And honestly, it wasn't appealing to a lot of people. Like, this is something that we felt from talking to the people on the ground. So some of them expressed frustration because they knew leadership. To be very honest and frank here, I'm referring to the MPs. They felt that they were very disconnected from the movement or the ground, right? And so others were also viewing them as sort of doing an authoritarian move because they were like leading on this instead of seeing like political parties or movements or an ideology that is leading on it or seeing actual work on the ground. So it was like the MPs were mainly doing that. Again, this is not my opinion. I'm just saying what people were saying on the ground. And so even if candidates were doing like work on the ground, that wasn't really reflected in the campaign. So which brings me back to the third point, which is related to the candidates' representation, which people were already also a bit frustrated about the representation of the candidates. So they thought that the candidates were completely disconnected from the ground, though a number of them did a lot of work on the ground, but there wasn't enough time, I believe, to also show that experience. Or to show that they come from very diverse social backgrounds, because the municipal elections, like the date of the elections was announced only 1.5 months before E-Day. So there wasn't a lot of time. And because we don't have like political parties that are organized, it's a lot we didn't have enough time to do that work. And so even though like I know a lot of candidates, they had experience over a lot of political or social experience over the past years. Some of them worked during crises, disasters, and wars. But at the same time, I think that we also have to acknowledge that there was like a missing, we had a very limited level of diversity in the candidates' representation. So at the end of the day, there's something that we urban planners say, like, and urban sociologists, that cities that have towns in them, right? And so cities are a collage of neighborhoods that have very different identities and cultures and networks. And I think that we missed having representation from a lot of these networks. And finally, like the fourth point is related to the negative campaigns. So we all know that our MPs, like throughout the 3 years, have been dealing with a lot of negative campaigns. Us candidates during the elections, we also dealt with that. And I think MPs were dealing with that mostly because they're defying big economic power structures, that including the banking sector. And some of us as candidates were also talking about Solidaire, which is part of that big economic power structures that we were trying to defy at some point. So it was extremely challenging, and there were a lot of negative campaigns because of that, and they were happening in different forms. So at some point, religious institutions and sheikhs, specifically in mosques, they would do negative campaigns against us, not because we're against religion, because we're not, but they say that we are, and they claim that we are, because they are part of that sort of economic power structure, right? Like the Mufti, who is the highest authority in the Sunni religious authority, he's appointed by the people who are in power. Like he is appointed by MPs, Sunni MPs, and so on. And so I think like I have a lot more to elaborate on, but I know that I have very limited time. So, but in briefly, like I think all of these, they reflect one main problem, which is the absence of political organizing. And I think that this is something that I've heard already from Ala, and I think that we all agree on, that we really need to have political parties and political movements that are strong, that are able to organize the work, mitigate these issues, present ideologies, do more on-ground work, etc., etc. Yeah.
Definitely. I think you're completing Alaa's picture quite well, because I mean, of course, you're confirming this issue of lack of structure, but you're also adding to the picture that back in the day, the surprise effect of a pop-up campaign could work. Today, no, we are under scrutiny. People are looking at the performance of MPs who have been, or the Reformist camp has been part of the picture for quite a while. So it no longer has the benefit of being the newcomer that is bringing something fresh. In addition, you're also, I mean, mentioning two things that I think are important. I want to use them to build up with Ali's question, which is on the one hand, the structural asymmetry. We don't have party, we don't have money. Establishment media is against the reformists. But on the other hand, there are tactical choices. How much are we tying basically the political project to MPs or maybe to the government? What are the alliances and what kind of front are we trying to build? So I will move to Ali. Because Ali, I mean, you've been defending also a very interesting approach, at the same time principled, not Puritan, and also pragmatic, pushing for alliances, pushing to try to unite the different groups, reformist groups. And you were very successful in doing so in the 2022 election when you were running in the South in a very, very difficult circumscription, mostly dominated by Hezbollah and the Amal movement. And for the first time, there were two MPs elected. How do you explain today, after such a long time, the inability of those groups to coordinate efforts, to put their conflict aside, to focus on key battles, and to deliver to the people? And do you think that maybe the alliances with some political parties, establishment party, have harmed the reformist movement in the last year?
First, thank you, Jean, and for the invitation, and allow me to. I'm sorry, my English is not good as my French, so I will do my best. Let's say that the result of the municipal election was not a surprise and should not be a surprise. It's a question of process that explain the gaps and the structural gaps in the change movement. If we want to use this term, it's problematic. Let's prefer the alternative political group. And I think that this result reflects the end of the story of the sanction vote that started with the uprising of 2019 and the Beirut explosion, and that we were able to gain 13 seats, but to know that this 13 seats that was historical in Lebanon, the result was around 13% of the voters. So 13% of the voters of sanction vote. The vote in Lebanon is a collective vote. It's really based on interest and based on collective interest. It's not just that they are clientelists. You can have a person that vote against his interest and he don't gain anything from the leader, but his perception of politics is based on the protection of the community, of the collective group. And other problem, I think, is it's related to the absence of clear social base that we can represent and we want to represent. After a economic a collapse like 2019, you have different categories in Lebanon. You have the public employee. They are a part of the system and they are absent from the street. So we cannot defend them. They don't want, they are somehow imprisoned or taken by the system. The other part is the middle class, upper or down middle class, that they have their income in the banks and they go to the street, they support somehow the movement because they want their money back and it's their rights. But also you have a part of this movement, they are the people in the informal economy, like in a city of Tripoli where 80% of people don't have any bank account, so they are outside the system and somehow they don't care if the middle class, or they don't need, or they are not obliged to pay for the middle class to have. So the idea of sanction vote, the idea of represent the anti-corruption movement, the idea somehow that we represent 99% of the population against the good 99% against the 1%, the bad guy, this is not the case. And what happened with the MPs, that they have this heritage of failure to manage this problem, and they were obliged to go into a system, to go to a new game, the game of being in power or being in the institution, because being an MP is not being in the system. And the third point is that there's not a clear axe in Lebanon. You have a problem of sovereignty. You have the problem of Hezbollah, the big, at that time, we can talk later about the transformation. But from 2019, Hezbollah say with Nasrallah 2 days after the uprising, I am the system. I protect the system. no for election, no for changing presidents, and no for the fall down of the government. And we were able to do the first one. The government of Hariri resigned. So we are against Hezbollah who protect the system, and Hezbollah is against the uprising also. The second point is that there's a problem with the financial lobby in the country who's identified with the political system, and a part of these people, they are also against Hezbollah. So when you see this big picture, where do you start and where you will be pragmatic? If you want to go into pragmatism, you can find yourself with the allies of Hezbollah sometimes in some socio-economic question. And if you want to raise the problem of Hezbollah and how Hezbollah is building a state in the state, you will find yourself pro people that they are your enemy in the financial crisis. And based on this, because you don't have this social clear category that you aim to represent and they want you to represent themselves, you go into this, let's say, situation of anti-corruption discourse of people that they are here from different political with good intention, but this situation don't help you to build a social movement. Based on this, I was thinking about during 2022, it was easier because we were surfing on the wave of the vote sanction vote and the dynamic of 2019. Now you don't have it, and one of the other let's say challenge is that we were talking about change. Change arrived somehow with a new president with a good speech. You have a government who was our candidate. This change comes from up with the international and pressure, but in the same time, you do the change for the perception of population. Nawaf Islam is your candidate. The program of Joseph Aoun is the aim of March 17, grosso modo. So what do you expect? I think we have to admit that the dynamic of 2019, 2022, until the nomination of Nawaf Islam and the election of Joseph Aoun, was ended. This circle is ended. And the result of the election, and also, and I finish with this point, if we want to have some perspective for 2026, what is our political program? What is our main goal? Are we opposition to the government of Nawaf Islam? Are we in the government of Nawaf Islam? Are we the ally of the President of Republic who have a lot of question mark about his financial and economic vision? And also the government of Nawaf Islam, we can have a consensus between us around the person of Nawaf Islam, but Nawaf Islam is no longer our candidate. He's the prime minister of a government who represent all the political parties that we are opposed to them, starting from Hizb Amal, ending with all the other groups. So I think that this part of the story is ended. We have to admit it, and we have to see how can we go to the election of 2026 to attenuate English
To ease, to yeah,
the defeat. I will be very honest, or to limit
yeah.
the losses in the coming, and to be able to continue after 26.
Thank you so much, Ali. I mean, you put your finger on the most painful part, which is the idea that the sanction vote, the anti-corruption, the anti-anything, or the vague slogan of change is not enough. You also mentioned that there is a new polarization that needs to exist in the country because the old one is shaky. And you also mentioned, which is something I think is crucial, the idea of representing the interest of a social base, which is to a large extent something that is very unclear when it comes to the change movement. I'll move to the second part of our discussion, which has to do with now what, how to regain momentum, how to get ready for the next phase, which is in a year time, the elections of 2026. And I'll start with Ala again. You ran in 2022. It was mostly seen as a success, 300,000 vote for the change MPs or for all the lists, and 12 MP, 13 MP elected. If you go back to this episode, what are the do's and don'ts? What are the lessons learned? And more importantly, what needs to be different this time to stand a chance in 2026?
Thank you, Jean. I'll build on what my colleagues, Ali and Suha, articulated. And I believe Ali put a very clear political direction. In 2022, the two projects were very clear. There is a clear us against a clear them. Though the clear us was in some districts and in many cases intersectional with different nuances and stretched into different alliances with some ideological political groups, but the wave was bigger than everything else. So in 2022, there were a wave that we were part of it. Definitely, 2019 set the basis of it. The port explosion and all the ways of Hezbollah and other traditional parties and the banking elite interacted with the political and economic situation, supported this wave of movement that is based on let's change, wanting change. But here's the hard truth: wanting a change is not the same as being ready for it. And here I'm not only talking about the reform movement itself, if we want to name it as such, but I'm also talking about the public perception, from a public perception point of view. And honestly, the public perception, and here traditional media and traditional political parties played into this narrative that this change breakthrough, change movement breakthrough into the 2022 parliament will make things like La Vie en Rose. Here I need translation as well. So I think that this made things harder on political on public perception and on the political structure and political narrative of the reform movement itself, because the expectations were very high and we are not empowered yet. And here I agree with Ali. In a parliamentarian system, getting into representation is not getting into power. And now people view us in power because Nawaf Salam is our candidate, and he was our candidate in 2019, and he's our candidate, and we agree with we have consensus, and many of us agrees with his government narrative, and yeah. So sorry, were you trying to say something?
No, nothing. All good.
Okay, thank you. So here, let me start with the candidate selection. In 2022, many of us ran because we had credibility in our communities, and definitely political credibility based on activism experience, or because we stood clearly outside the ruling class. But that was not always enough. Like, some candidates didn't have team capacity, they didn't have a political organizing or political views, clear political views. Some didn't know how to connect outside their immediate networks. And let's be honest, in some places, we chose visibility over viability. Many of the candidates were there because they have media visibility. They were like media figures. They were here before as positioned well in traditional media. And it's an important thing in the Lebanese ecosystem, because we don't have our means. We have definitely Megaphone, Daraj, but those were established 2019 onwards. Like, spread, and they still spread among our community, not in the public perception arena or so. So we mistook moral clarity for political readiness. That's a mistake we can't afford in 2026, in my opinion. Next is the question of alliances. In 2022, I mentioned the alliances, and some reformist groups made deals with ideological forces who were part of the establishment at some point, thinking that this way they are being pragmatic, and then they entered the parliament. Those alliances got shifted, and we lost some of the credibility as an alternative because of such moves, maybe. And others refused any alliance at all, even with people who were close to our values. So the result, we often split the vote, or worse, we confused voters who couldn't understand who stood for what. We were fragmented not just in our lists, but in our messages, priorities, and our ways of working. So now I've heard like what Soha was saying about the performance of elected MPs, or the elected MPs leading on the scene. This is a thing that we need to acknowledge as a challenge that we are facing. Those MPs entered the parliament where the rules of the game were rigged against them. Politically, public perception, media, and even like in all other means, many of them also walked in without preparation. There was no common platform, no coordination structure, no internal support team, no back office, no strategy for outreach, for communication, or shared decisions. Some MPs responded to this reality by retreating into silence, and others tried to overcompensate by doing everything alone. And the result is a group that was elected as a bloc. It quickly became seen as 12 individuals. And it's still in the public perception that they are fragmented. So we started as a historic win, and then began to look in the eyes of many like a missed opportunity. And this applies on because the media is very influential, and the political parties are very equipped on a grassroots level. Though the block of voters we got is very impressive and big and good in 2022, we missed the opportunity to bridge this gap. So now I'm not just saying this to assign blame. I say this as someone who has been inside the process. We were trying to build new politics without a clear manual or institutional cover, but we must learn from it. So what do we need to do differently in 2026? I have like mainly 5 points in mind. First, we need to treat this like the long-term political project that it is. That means moving from scattered lists into a coherent political front, but yet that shares the minimum common program, and to develop real mechanism for decision-making, coordination, accountability. We cannot go to another election as parallel islands. Second, definitely candidate selection has to become more a collective process, not a last-minute compromise. And at the same time, we need to account for the strategic alliances question, not in an only opportunistic way, not saying that, but definitely in a way where we can like enhance or guarantee that our losses are minimal. That doesn't mean to be ideologically to have this ideological purity. It means to have clarity. Who are we? Who are we not? Who can we work with? Under what terms? We should aim to build alliances with the social forces, in my opinion, who can lend us real legitimacy and organizing strength, not just for vote banks, but value-based partners. And definitely we need to activate social groups in different districts who have voting powers, but it doesn't they doesn't come with a political luggage, like having alliances with some controversial political groups or political parties. So this is as important in my opinion. Fourth, we must be honest about the performance of the MPs we got in the last election. Some did their best in impossible circumstances. Others maybe underperformed. That's normal. The point is not to attack or abandon them. It's to build a culture of accountability and support. If we want people to trust us again, we have to show that we take responsibility for our representatives.
Sorry, Ala,
Okay,
I have
I'll be
horrible job of keeping track of time. So if you can just wrap up the
sorry, I'll be very quick in the last point. Definitely we need to listen, respond, organize around real local concerns, not just slogans about corruption or sovereignty, but also about day-to-day things that are affecting people's lives, like water, electricity, education. And definitely we need to answer the big political question. We are an opposition who is viewed as part of the current government. This is a very tricky position. We need to clarify this position or narrative.
To that point of length with Ali, to the point of the government. So
So 2026 is not just another election. It's a second chance. That doesn't come often in a country like ours. So we need to take this chance very seriously. And sorry for
not at all. You also gave us a lot of material to bounce on. Just to make a segue with what Ala is saying, basically what I would remember from his main point is the idea of lack of readiness and the idea of taking shortcuts, the danger of taking a shortcut, getting a candidate because they're popular but not necessarily skilled, sometimes making alliances that are very costly politically, and also not being prepared at a very technical level to run in an election. I'll build on Alaa's point and ask you, Suha, also about the different framing that is needed for the next election. But this time, how to bridge the national narrative, something that has to do with the big issues, issue of sovereignty, of arms, of reform, with also the local concerns to regain trust of the base and to also do what Ali was talking about, which is to really represent the interest, the material interest of base. So my question to you would be, what is the rhetoric that is needed, the change in rhetoric and discourse that is needed to actually stand a chance in 2026 from the local perspective that you have?
Okay. Before talking about this local perspective, I just want to say that I think we all agree that most likely this change era is going to end. But I just want to say that I think that if it's not going to end, we must end it. But not for the same reasons that Ala and Ali have talked about. So to me, it's not about MPs, it's not about Nawaf Salam. I think that the term change itself, just like anti in the anti-establishment, means nothing. Change what? And change it to what, right? So I think that we must end that era because honestly, it only means that it has an oppositional tone. It means nothing. And we need to very clearly state what are our political goals and ideology, which then would bring us, I think, to the more local work. So I think that we need to identify or to sort of have the political movements that we've talked about and the project. I think that we all need to dream together and to work together, especially people who have very shared values and principles, and to really to work together towards having these movements. And I think that these movements have to be very bold. and they have to be very confrontational, because I think that the existing economic power structures that I've talked about, because they do impact at the local level and at the national level. I've talked a bit about Solidaire. I'm not going to talk a lot about what it means, but basically it's a private company that's managing the historic core of Beirut ever since the civil war, like after the end of the civil war. The same way for the banking sector at the national level. But I think that we need to confront these economic power structures. I think that we need to do that because they're very central obstacles to our political work, and that they will continue to dominate the political discourse if we don't confront them. Going back locally and based on the results of the municipal elections, I think that parties and movements, they have to refine, or the emerging ones that will follow the elections, they need to redefine urban and rural margins as primary sites of political strategy. And I'm not just saying that because we need to find candidates from these neighborhoods and these margins, right? I think that we need also to include people who live in these margins in political strategizing and in political work and in speech. And we need to do that if we really claim to be diverse in terms of social class, just as much as we are in terms of sectarian background. And also because I believe that it's not that I believe that. This is where the struggles first exist, from the margins. And that's why I think that our local work needs to start from there, whether it's about including people from these social backgrounds, or understanding these networks more, or maybe claiming public spaces there as new spaces of protest instead of the traditional spaces of protests in downtown Beirut or more high-end neighborhoods. And of course, I think that this, with the more global and national scale political work and organizing, requires a great deal of work and labor and unpacking. And I know that it's not easy, but I think that we need to work collectively towards it, or it's going to be the end of all of us, like for this whole political landscape. And because you mentioned like the next elections, personally, I don't see like that the elections, which I don't see any value, but I think that we're focusing way too much on the elections and about building power for the next elections. And I think that the main goal should be about seeing a different future, or to have a long-term vision and a goal that we're working towards. And of course, we can assess 1 year from now whether or not we succeeded in doing that, and based on that, we can decide if it's good to us to run for the elections, or tell people to run for it. Like I'm saying, we as a movement. I'm not going to do that because a lot of people have asked me. Anyway, so based on our performance, I think 1 year later, we're going to then assess and say, okay, we're going to run for elections or skip the current elections. But I think that before we do that, we need to make sure that we're strong enough to confront that system, because it's extremely powerful and extremely rooted in our society. And it's honestly our duty to be the people who are doing that confrontation, but we need to do it collectively.
Thanks a lot, Soha, and thanks also for the very needed reminder that politics doesn't happen only through elections. Elections are an amplifier, they're a very important milestone, but there's everything between and after elections that is also as crucial. I'll move to Ali, and I'll ask you, beyond elections today, everybody was mentioning the need for a software update for what we are calling the change movement. A new discourse, moving from the anti-something to the pro-something, putting a political proposition on the table. What, in your opinion, is the outline of this political proposition? In response to Hezbollah's proposition, to the bank's proposition, to the Lebanese forces, everybody has something to put on the table. How can today this change movement, 17th of October movement, put something on the table, and what would it be like? And the second question is what you mentioned earlier, the relationship with the government and the relationship with the ability of this government to deliver. You're from the South, delivering on reconstruction, delivering on economic reform. If the government fails to deliver, is this a risk for the credibility of the movement? Yes or no? These are my two questions to you. And after Ali, we will move to the question from our audience that will be written in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, I will start from today. I was in a meeting and the question was, how do the war between Israel and Iran affect Lebanon? Maybe for the first time in our history, this war did not affect the situation in Lebanon. We are already in a very bad situation. So if Iran marks points or Israel marks points or the American have imposed something, the challenges of the Lebanese society are the same. I think what we need to know is that to understand what is happening now in the country to be able, I will start saying I don't have answers to your question, but what I'm trying to say is to try to see in a different way from how the political traditional forces see the situation in Lebanon. First, Hezbollah, as we knew it for decades, this chapter is ended. Whether we like it or no, this chapter is ended. The second point is that the Israeli domination in the region and the impact in Lebanon is very risky, and it's a huge challenge for us as Lebanese and for me or for people from the south, how to deal with it. Third point, and here I will open a parenthesis to friends coming from or listening from USA or other country. There's sometimes, starting from October 7th till now, there's a misunderstanding between us, between progressive people in the north, let's use the term, and in our countries. In Europe, in the United States, people were suffering or were struggling against the Israeli propaganda, the Israeli pressure with the anti-Semitism discourse, with the threat on people, with what is happening in France, in Germany, in Europe. But in our country, and I understand that in this way people can see the problem less, they will understand the effect of a movement like Hamas or like Hezbollah or what Iran is doing in our countries. And this is a historical misunderstanding or different perception between the opposition movement in the West and people suffering from the dictatorship of people or leaders or countries or movement that they are fighting Israel or an anti-imperialistic speech. And in this point, I understand. What I want in Lebanon is now to build a strategy based on the interest of the country. What is the interest of Lebanon today? The interest of Lebanon today is to have internal peace, but not a peace agreement. We need peace between the Lebanese. We need to stop the military fight with Israel because we lost the war. Hezbollah lost the war. He lost the war that deja Lebanon pay for 3 decades the empowerment of Hezbollah, and when the war arrived, Hezbollah was not able to defend the country. So now what Lebanon needs is to be a normal country with one army, one judicial system, with a state with all its problems, that where we can struggle to fight against this system. And to be honest, the power of Hezbollah between the hand of Nabih Berri, the representative of Shia in the system, and he's the president of the parliament, but his power, he's here for more than 3 decades. It's clear now that we can understand that the power of Hezbollah in Lebanon was used by Nabih Berri with his alliance with the financial system to protect the bank. After 6 years, we don't have any reform, literally any reform. And based on this, I think that Nawaf Islam and Joseph Aoun, till now, they, after this war is the end of the cycle of wars after October 7. This was the last war. Everybody was waiting the Iranian and American negotiation. The negotiation happened, arrived. We don't know all the detail, but it arrived with war for 12 days. And here we are. How to solve the problem of demilitarization of Hezbollah? Not because American and Israeli they are asking for it, as a Lebanese interest. We need to end with this episode. As a person from the south, that I lost my house, our family house, my priority is the reconstruction and right to return. And when I'm using the word right or return, I mean it, like for Palestinian. Israeli in this war in the south, they did something new. They say it. They learn from other wars. In the other war or the previous war, they occupied land and they let people in this lands, so resistance was possible. Now they don't occupy land. They have this 5 points, but massive land, they don't occupy it. But in the same time, the south is empty. And if we compare it with 2006, if money, we are able to raise money now, we need 10 years minimum to go back to our village in the south. So this is a main problem in the country, the demilitarization of Hezbollah as a national need. لأنه now what is happening is that Israeli, they are taking the question of arms of Hezbollah, they are finishing the game with time. Some part of it was destroyed during war, and part of it is being destroyed now. So the last card between the Lebanese diplomacy is to negotiate on the arsenal and what we have, arsenal of Hezbollah. The strategy of Hezbollah and the weakness of the state, Israel is taking everything from the arsenal of Hezbollah without any negotiation. Lebanon is now like a company who's losing, and it needs to sell the company, and the interest of Lebanon is to sell it now, because 1 month after 3 months we will be in affair. And this is a main problem to see. And in this point, I think that the movement, the change movement, can build a very responsible speech where we are concerned by the Israeli domination and danger, but in the same time to say for Hezbollah, please, game over, stop it. What you have now, you failed in protecting the country and to protect yourself also from Israel. Iran, even if Iran is succeed in this war, this success will not change the equation in Lebanon or in Gaza. So the only chance for us is to go back to the state. Until now, this do not happen. Based on this, we can build a national discourse, not a synthesis, but to be responsible and to answer all the problem. And Lebanon now need this kind of responsible discourse with all the community in all the faces in Lebanon. When you have this change period, people will prefer to stay, to go back to their community, and this also will happen. How to build it? I think we have to build our political discourse in the coming month based on three keywords: sovereignty. Sorry, I don't know what happened. Sovereignty, justice, and accountability. And what is happening now, based on the difficulties, people are saying, let's go to reform without accountability. No one in Lebanon wants accountability. And what will happen in the coming month, that all the leaders of different political parties, they want to finish with us. Not because we were a threat to the system, because we were sometimes, on a dérangé le système, how to say it?
We shook the system. We bothered people in power, in a sense.
Exactly. And this, they don't want it anymore. So to be honest, what we should do in the coming year, and here I want to say to Soha, election is, as Jean said, is the moment of the amplification of politics. So no, you cannot overcome the moment of election as it's a detail of history. No, it's a very important point, a turning point to build yourself. Even if you decide not to have another approach, to go into a radical perception or goal in the election, this way. My concern, Jean, here is
Yeah.
that threat, that challenge are so big that the last defeat was a shock for everybody. My concern is a lot of activists in the movement, change movement, they want to go to individual choices or decentralized electoral choices, where the movement will disappear and we will go back to the same the same wine in different bottle, to have a social movement. After 5-6 years it ends and we have to rebuild it again. And I think this is not just a challenge for us in Lebanon. And if you may, to end with this point, even if now we're talking about Lebanon, this kind of question for a progressive sectarian activist all over the Arab world, it's the same problem. How to touch the interest of social classes, either they are middle class or working class, if I may say. We are disconnected. We are not able to build a social class. This is the main challenge, and I think we should do it in Lebanon with a political position, to say that in Lebanon there's people that they don't want other experiences, but we could not do it without looking to the macro politics. We have to have a clear position for Hizb Allah. We don't have to have any compromise with the financial system, whether we know that they will attack us. The attack, that we talk about it, will be amplified in the coming years and in the coming month, and we will pay it.
Question in the chat about that. So, sorry, Ali, I have to cut you because we need to keep.
Yeah, thank you.
And we have a lot of questions coming. So, thank you for the three of you for this very exhaustive and rich picture and analysis. I'll try to take as many questions as possible. So, I'll ask you to be very also brief in your answers so we can take as many questions as we can. I'll start maybe with this question. Which is about the governmental policies that could help you as anti-establishment movement to prepare or to be ready or to be seen as credible for 2026. In other words, what does this government need to deliver to be able to push the reform movement and to fulfill the promise of change? Who wants to take that answer? Maybe, I don't know, Suha or...
I will try.
Okay, go ahead.
The government could do nothing for us. First off, one, we are not represented in the government. And this is a problematic. We were a part, I don't know if the other people know, but the political maneuver done by Ibrahim Mnaimne and by the other MP, and with all what was done during 72 hours, without this maneuver, Najib Mikati, the main patriarch of this system, will be now prime minister. But the problem in Lebanon is that you can impose a prime minister, you can impose the resign of a prime minister, but the system is so strong And here I think there's responsibility for our MP that we don't have, we are not represented in the government. Now, to understand in the Lebanese system, if you are in the government, it will help you to have this results in the election, and or you are in the opposition and you will attack the government, and based on this do your campaign. We are between the two, in the two situations. We are not opposed to Nawaf Islam, we are not opposed to the president, but we are not a part of the government, and I'm not talking about a clientelistic part. So no, the government could do nothing. We should
ask you the question
decide.
differently.
We
I will
should
ask you the question
decide.
differently because I think this is what the person asking the question means. I understand exactly what you mean by this clientelist approach to government helping and serving, etc. I'm talking here about the reforms, the key reforms that are at stake.
Okay.
The traditional reform. So
the key reforms, I'm not, yeah, for the key reform, very briefly, I think that the situation is not good at all. The financial and the bank lobby is so strong in the system, so strong in the even in the government. Some of the nomination and the coming nomination are not very good. Let's say the information for the coming nomination are not good, and I think that this government is not till now able to do the reform that we hope, and this is also a lose for us to defend also our choices in the last months.
Ala, I'll give you the floor, but I will ask you another question if you want to answer both at once. There's a question that says, how has increased international attention to Lebanon's political transition by actors like the United States have impacted the reform movement and its strategy? So I think these two questions kind of work well together if you want to answer them at once.
Thank you, Jean. I will try to combine and bridge both. Sorry if there is noise in the background.
It's fine. We can hear you. We hear the baby, but very far away. So it's all good.
Yeah. Okay. So we are in a moment of opportunity and in a moment of fragility in the political sense in Lebanon, but at the same time, this moment of fragility turned out to be a moment of opportunity at the same time. Here, I do think that the current government and Nawaf and Joseph Aoun can do a lot of things that can like change the current dynamics, and that can benefit the country, and then this benefit can be transformed into benefit for the reformists bloc, because if people starts to see reforms in place, reforms that are working, they will have this perception that having a bigger bloc of reformists in the 2026 parliament is a good thing. And here's the thing, John. What do traditional political elite want? They want a 2026 parliament without a reformist bloc. I agree with what Ali said in the sense that that the reformist bloc were doing like some kind of noise and some kind of understanding of the parliamentarian dynamics that the traditional political parties, they don't want and they don't like, and especially in times of reforms and change and transformation and so on. So if the current government finished the IMF deal, get it into place with all the reforms needed, if they managed to finish the Hezbollah dilemma, with the monopoly of weapons in the hand of the government, and they regain the trust of the people in the government and the Lebanese army and the oath of the presidency, this will benefit us, I believe, and I believe that big part of why people in the public perception kind of they are seeing everyone the same because of failing to deliver on the promises. And I agree with Ali with what he said, that we are in opposition, not represented in the government. Yes, that's true. But in the public perception, that's not true. People in the public perception, they say the Ibrahim Naini maneuver that you orchestrated and architectured got Nawaf into place. Nawaf is your candidate since 2019 uprising. He's your prime minister. You are failing to deliver on your promises and on your promises to do all the reforms and so on. So two main things, if they manage to get them into place. One is the economic reforms, the IMF deal, and this other one is the that is related to sovereignty, disarmament of Hezbollah, monopolizing of the weapons, and rebuilding the foreign policy of Lebanon into a more open one with the Arab countries and with the 5 countries that are interested in Lebanon. I believe we can rebuild and regain the momentum of telling the public, if you want more of those reforms, you need to vote for more reformists in the next parliament.
Yeah.
With having this, I insist on all the things that we mentioned before. On the inside job we need to do as a movement. So this is not kind of either or. We need them both.
That's very clear. Suha, do you want to build on this, or I pick another question from the audience?
I actually wanted to talk about the elections law, right? Because there was a question about elections law, and I think that there has been a lot of draft laws, technically speaking, which would give us more chance to win the elections. But I think the main 2 primary ones that would really help us. The first one is the gender quota, and that we've been talking a lot about it, whether it's in municipal council or in the parliamentary council. But the 2 biggest blocks in parliament have been standing in the way of having this law signed and agreed on and active. So these are the Hezbollah bloc and the Lebanese forces bloc. And because they know that we have more representation of women in our political landscape, much more than their parties. So I think that it would give us more chance if the gender quota law is out there. Especially if just looking at municipal elections, we had 13 women versus 11 men on our list, right? Compared to the list of the establishment that had only 4 women compared to 20 men on its list, and it won the election. So I think if the gender quota was there, we could have had at least a chance to win some seats. The second would be the current expats law draft that's also very controversial at the moment. And I think that most of the expats, this is something that we've seen from the last elections, they've voted for change, right? Or for the anti-establishment movement. So I think that the current draft law that's being also discussed in parliament is also a big issue, because it limits the seats of the diaspora and the expats. So, but I know at the same time that it most likely won't be passed, because there's a petition against this law. So I think very technically speaking, but I think that it's really not mainly an issue of the elections law, right? We know that there is very low momentum. There's a lot of work that we need to do. We need to gain back momentum. We need to build movements, political parties before. I agree with you, Ali, that elections are really important, but at the same time, you have to be very powerful in terms of decision making during the elections, at least. And we know, I personally know, from the results of the municipal elections and from what was happening during the municipal elections, that there wasn't a very clear decision-making process. Let's say it very bluntly. And so if there's a movement or movements that are not just present and powerful, but they have presence in different maybe regions, but at the same time, very clear goals, and they were able to recruit people based on the principles and the projects. They have more decision-making power. And I think that this is honestly what a party should care about. If they care about also their candidates, they need to have more decision-making power, which also relates to big movements, not just the momentum on the streets. Anyway.
So I have a question just for you. So if you can also answer that one briefly, and then I'll try to get the remaining question. So the question says, Soha talked about the need to start from the margin and from the local level, and at the same time be bold and more confrontational and very clear politically. First, do you think that this bold message is appealing to marginalized local area? One, يعني people from those areas would be appealed to feel represented, and second, how to reconcile the need to involve people on the ground, and at the same time to have very clear stance, sometimes on sensitive issues, sometimes I'm adding from myself on progressive issues, at the same time. So I think I don't know if you got the question because it's a very long paragraph, so I'm trying to summarize it. If you'd like to answer it.
Okay, I think that there's a very misconception about people in margins. I think that people tend to stereotype like these groups, of course, because they're very conservative. And when it comes to confrontation, we might think that, no, of course, there are clientelistic networks, right, that are deeply rooted in society. And these people either benefit from them or in some way sort of reproduce them. But there are people at the margins who are not benefiting from these clientelistic networks, or they probably benefit from them, but they know that they don't want to continue their lives that way. They want to see a different system where they have access to their basic rights through the government, not through political leaders. And so that's why I think that if we look at people differently and understand their concerns more and see them in a different way, I think, so to me, I think it's more about misconception and a bit of prejudice and things of that sort. So, and I also think that there are a lot of people in this society who are extremely progressive, very revolutionary, and I also think that there are misconceptions also about even like big families and cities. So I hear a lot about them being reproducing the power structures and the inequalities in our societies. But at the same time, these are structures of mutual aid and solidarity, right? And so I've personally seen that from my personal, very extended family. Like we have an NGO for the family. So, and they couldn't care less about my political views. What they cared about is that we're going to support her no matter what her political views are. And I think that so there are misconceptions, I believe. So, yeah.
Okay, we're kind of running out of time. I'll take maybe two questions and wrap them together. The first is asking, is there an organized structure or group of people that are actively working to create a political party or a coalition or a political platform that can represent the needs of the public and the diaspora? So if somebody would like to share insights on that. And then there are two questions that I'll lump together. If you guys are running again, and more generally, if there's anything that makes you hopeful at all. So if you can try to provide brief answers. Ala, you can go first.
Daisy, yeah, there are some efforts. You are part of many of them, I believe so. With Ali, and I believe everyone is here is doing their part. Definitely, it's not an easy job, and it's not an easy thing. But I will bridge this to.
I think we lost Ala, or it's just me. I think. Okay, maybe Suha or Ali, you want to take it from there about the organizational work, and also if you're running, and also what gives you hope. So these three questions all together.
Ala is back or no? No, he's still
No,
not moving.
not yet. It's frozen. Yeah.
Yes, efforts are here. Now, if you ask me now, and we have a discussion yesterday, Jean, people are not aware about the danger to to
Work solo.
to go into election without a national or a strategic position that all of us we needed. And to be honest, it's clear that the alliances in different districts in Lebanon are not the same. So in the south, you can go into some electoral, let's say, dynamic with part of the system because you are against Hezbollah, but in the end, this same party will be in a very tough position against other candidate in the north. But in the same time, let's try to build this movement as a political opportunity. And in this case, I think that the experience of NUPES in France, where all the leftist and progressive movement, that they have so many problems between themselves and there's no trust between themselves. But when the Marine Le Pen movement was near from power, they take the decision for the national interest, but also for their personal and political interest. Let's build on this. It's clear that we cannot have all the people in the same boat. People that they don't have a clear position against Hezbollah and the question of sovereignty, we cannot go together. People that they have not a real political position, clear political position against the bank lobby. And even if people think that, okay, we lost the battle against the financial lobby, taking this strategy, they will lose more and you will lose your DNA. Pragmatism don't mean that you lose your DNA and the political position. Are we able to do it? I think we have to do to go directly, and this is my pragmatic approach, Jean, to go by to start discussion the question of election and the question of alliance between us and build on it the political program and build on it the continuity of this program after election. لأنه if we go into political movement, we are not able to build a political movement. Let's build a electoral alliance between people that they share some values and go build on it for a political movement after the election.
Very clear. If Suha and Ala want to say like final words about that, and also
I'm candidate because this kind of even if it's not question of results, it's a question of continuity, and you cannot leave the political scene locally. So you have to be candidate even if not based on the result. It's a political and a personal choice.
Yeah. So Suha and Ala, and just if you could include a small word, because Muhammad just asked us a question about the work being done to for the diaspora voting, and also the work about the different electoral alliances that Ali already hinted at. So Suha and Ala, final comments based on the questions we had. Ala, if you want to resume from where you started, but please
thank you, Jean. I will
brief
not
because
open
we
my video
reached
because I'll not open my video because I'm facing connection problems.
Okay.
Concerning the coalitions and the approach towards elections, definitely we need to approach the election with the mentality of to save what can be saved, and on how to sustain the movement and the reformists movement after the 2026 election. And for this, we need to maintain a reasonable block in the coming parliament. This is definite. We can't run for elections with the intention and plan not to win it. We need to run with the intention and plan and architecture in mind on each and every district. What can be done? What's our current situation in this district, and what are the things that we can do differently in each and every district. What are the winning seats this time? Not in all districts the same winning seats are the same as they were in 2022, in my opinion. And there are like different tools that we need to use in this sense. So the other part of the question, I believe it was sorry,
About whether you're willing to run again, and also what are you relying on, or what is giving you hope now in the current
I
situation?
believe retreating is not an option. We should be running again and being part of what we already started. This is not an option, and people will not buy this as a responsible move. And there are many people who build the credibility that we need to build on this credibility, and we need to have a new view towards several social and socially active groups to include them within our lists. And definitely we need to think of alliances that can get us what we've lost in a way or another. Definitely without a political compromise that makes us lose our identity and our promise.
Great. We're past time, so Suha, final words about the questions that were asked, or anything you'd like to add.
Yeah, very briefly, I'm not going to repeat the diaspora question because I've already mentioned that when talking about the electoral laws. When it comes to the networks, I think that there are already networks of expats that are coordinating with local political groups or parties. But at the same time, I think that there are also different types of networks that we need to build and alliances. So I'm talking, for example, about building an alliance with actors in Norway, or actors that are very clearly and confrontational and say very clearly that they're against the Israeli aggression and the Israeli occupation and the genocide and so on. And I know that over the past 2 years, there has been a global movement against the Israeli aggression, one which we can also build on somehow. Find actors who have been, or especially in organized groups, who have been working on that, and build alliances with them, whether they're countries or like political groups. I know that there's a bit of diplomatic work that was done between Lebanon and several countries by some actors who, but I think that it wasn't like put in public, but there was an attempt to do that somehow. On the question whether or not I'm going to run again for elections, and to me, it's about building movements and the long-term goal. Like if we have that, then I'd consider that. And whether or not I'm hopeful, I think that decline is part of any movement and anything in life and any life cycle, right? So especially in political life cycles, it's completely normal, but we have to learn from the decline and from our failures and to mature with new tools and new strategies. And that doesn't necessarily mean rebranding Ali, because I know that you also mentioned that. But I think that we need to have movements and to build on them, because we've tried rebranding, we've tried recycling initiatives. It's really not about that. It's about what you're presenting to the public. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Suha, Ala, and Ali. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I'll refer back to Tim for the final words.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you to all the panelists for really a brilliant and sobering discussion. But I'm very grateful for this kind of frank and self-critical perspective that's helped all of us kind of understand the challenges that you and everyone in Lebanon are facing, and also an accounting for the role that the reformist movement itself has played in kind of these circumstances, as well as the larger context and how it's created challenges for you. And I'm really hopeful that you've already highlighted a lot of critical lessons for how to learn from these experiences and build political power and momentum for change in the coming period. And I just want to say many political coalitions have faced similar challenges in their post-revolutionary efforts. And it's great to see so many smart and self-aware political actors and activists committed to learning from those experiences domestically and regionally, and reforming their own strategies with the aim of being able to deliver on reform at the national level for everyone in Lebanon. And I share a touch of hope as well, and I wish everyone in Lebanon all the best, and thank you all again for this brilliant discussion, and thank you to our audience for sticking with us. We really appreciate it. This is part of a long-standing effort on the part of Time Up to work with Lebanese actors and people who are working towards reform, and we will continue to do so in the coming years. Take care and all the best.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Suha, Ala.
Thank you. Thank you for the
everybody.
opportunity. Thank you, Ali.